The Badgers have added more pieces to the defensive line. I'm going to tell you why you got to maybe pump the brakes just a little bit if we're going to think that that position is way, way better. Plus, Mabrey Mettauer to the portal. Let's talk about it. Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Happy Sunday night, Monday morning. We're recording Monday's show right now. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in as I hit the old school intro there accidentally for longtime fans of the show. You probably remember that one. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Appreciate the absolute heck out of every one of you tuning in. I'm Ryan Harris, your host, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today we're talking portal losses, Jamel Howard, Mabrey Mettauer, and why maybe that's a good thing in a way. We're going to talk some basketball, but I want to start with the defensive line, the new additions through the portal. Is the defensive line actually better? I want to start here. Two new guys that we haven't had a chance to talk about. We talk about every new portal addition on this show. Let's start with Tyreese Fearbry, former four-star recruit, Kentucky player. This was a kid who was a top 200 edge guy, 6'5", 230, 240 pounds, really, really athletic. This is a high upside type of a lottery tick in Tyreese Fearbry. Not somebody that has produced a lot. He's been at Kentucky. Not a lot has happened there. He had 5 tackles in a game against Texas. But you go back and you watch that high school film and you can see why everybody was excited about him. This was one of the big blue chip edge prospects, one of the better edge rushers Kentucky's ever landed. 2 years of eligibility left for him. Why do I like it? Well, why do I like it and why am I concerned? I like it because these are the type of athletes that you need. He's still a really good athlete. In a way, if you can unlock him, there's something there. You think about a guy, sometimes players take a while. You think of a Leon Jacobs, for example, who, a couple different positions, couple different spots, and then finally by the time he was a junior, it clicked. And then you had something because the athletic underlying tools are always there. It's like a race car that's been stuck in a garage. If you get the right mechanic, maybe you can unlock something. I like it because it's a lottery ticket with a high upside. If you scratch it off correctly, maybe you can get something. Chances are there's probably more often than not, it's not going to hit. If you get a player from a power school who hasn't produced, more often than not, it's not going to hit. But I like taking the chance on upside. It's gambling to some degree. You have other pieces in that edge area that I think are pretty good that you can fall back on. The Daryl Petersons, the Aaron Witts. I think Heiberg is going to play next year. Cheeks. I think you got some guys in this other portal class that are going to profile on the edge as well. So you have depth there. Why not take a lottery ticket swing? Why not take a swing at a big upside guy? And if you can figure something out and you unlock the tools that made Auburn was after him when he was a high school recruit. I think Georgia was. He had a massive offer list. So I like getting kids like this because you're not typically going to get this level of recruit as Wisconsin unless you're getting them at some type of discount. And what's the discount? The discount historically could be in-state school or in-state player that is overlooked. The discount could be maybe some type of late bloomer. The discount could be injury. In this case, it's the discount is productivity. He hasn't been as productive as his athletic tools say he should be, but that's okay. That's why you're getting him at a discount. I don't think it hurts. I like pickups like this as long as you balance them out as long as you're not counting on him, right? You're not picking up a guy like this and saying, man, we really need to get a high floor starter there because there's nothing in the barrel, right? At cornerback's a great example of this. Right now at corner, you can't take a bunch of risks on guys that you're not sure if they can play at least at a competent level. At corner, you need floor risers. You need a couple guys who you can plug and play. You can stick them in the wall, and they're not going to fall over. At outside linebacker, where you have a little more depth, take a swing on a high upside guy. And if he unlocks himself, I was reading a Kentucky beat reporter. They were talking about him, and they said, this is just coming into this year. They said, this guy still looks like he has every tool that you would want an SEC pure edge rusher to have. They got to figure out how to use them. I like that type of addition because, again, if it hits, it gives you something that you don't have on this roster. The other one we want to talk about is Micheal Garner coming in from Grambling, another defensive lineman, 6'6", 280. I love that size. It feels like a little bit of more of just a run stopper or that type of guy. I don't think there's a lot of burst there. Had 4.5 tackles for loss, or 11 tackles, 4.5 for loss, 2 sacks last year. He was a former basketball player, so I think footwork is there. There's some length there. Again, this is a bit of a James Thompson Jr. type of replacement. You're looking for that bigger edge that can use his arms to keep blockers on a little off balance, that can set the edge, that can give you some size, that can hold up a little better in the run, disrupt passing games with his arms and his wingspan. I think he's a bit of just a guy, but you need those. You need rotational pieces on the defensive line. You need solid. And that's been my buzzword this entire season, this entire offseason, solid. Can we get to solid on the defense line? Can we get to solid at quarterback? Can we get to solid as a football team? I don't think we're that far from solid. I think this is a player that helps you get to solid. I don't think he's necessarily a ceiling raiser. All right, I want to throw this next thing up here. And what I've realized is the portal moves so quick. I like am forgetting people's names, right? I was trying to make a list of, is the defensive line better? Did we actually improve in the front seven? And I couldn't remember one of the guys' names because it moves so quickly. So I'm just going to throw this up here for anyone watching. We have incoming, returning, and outgoing defensive linemen. And we got some presents at the bottom because it's the holiday season. And we love each other in this Badger community. That's it, right? So incoming defensive linemen, so far you got 5. And again, these players are going to slot in different spots. But Mason Reiger, Micheal Garner, Parker Peterson, Corey Walker, and Charles Perkins. Those are your incoming guys. You got 5 of them, which is awesome. That's a high volume number. That's more than I thought they would get. I think I put the target number at 3 coming into the offseason. And I would have liked more. I just didn't think it was realistic given how difficult it was to get defensive linemen last year. If you remember, they wanted to bring in more than 2 last year, and they had a really hard time landing guys. They ended up with just Brandon Lane and Elijah Hills. They got 5 this offseason. So listen, the effort's there. Don't knock the hustle. Returning defense linemen, you still have Dylan Johnson, Ben Barton, Brandon Lane, Ernest Buller Jr., Nolan Bills, who was a walk-on, but started to get run at the end of last year. I wouldn't write him off. So if you just look at that, you got 10 guys. 10 guys for a defense that's nominally going to run a 3-3-5, maybe a 4-2-5. They're going to be bigger. They're going to emphasize more girth on the defensive line. Coach has talked about that. They want to do that, and you're seeing that in the recruiting. Guys going out. You're losing Elijah Hills, Curtis Neal, James Thompson Jr., Jamel Howard, and Hank Weber. We're going to talk about Jamel Howard in our next segment where we talk about him and Mabrey Mettauer. Is this line better? Is this defensive line better than last year? And I think it probably is. But before we get too far ahead of our skis, remember the conversation last year about linebacker. Remember what we talked about where we were sure linebacker was better, where we were sure linebacker got better because it couldn't. Remember, we all talked about this and we were all excited about it. We couldn't be worse was part of it, right? Like, of course we're going to be better. We brought in 5 guys and the staff really identified a need. They went out and got it. They got their plan A guys. They got guys with tools. They got guys that have things to prove. They got proven starters from Power 4 teams. He brought in a Jaheim Thomas and a Cheeks and a Pius and a Lowry. We got multiple Power 4 starters, high level, lower level guys with a guy like a John Pius. You got a young up-and-comer Sebastian Cheeks. Of course it's going to be better. And then it was a disaster. So what lessons can you learn from that? Because just bringing in 5 defensive linemen, losing 5 defensive linemen doesn't necessarily make this a better unit. I think a couple of the things here that we learned from last year, or that I learned from last year, is this isn't a video game. You can't just get 5 new guys, plug them in, and it's and they play like they've been in this scheme their whole life. 2 or 3 of these guys aren't going to hit. That's one thing, right? A couple of these guys just won't hit. They won't work out, or they won't be ready to play this year. So that 5 you're bringing in, attrition's already going to take a couple of those down. Unless it's just, you're just not going to hit on all of them, right? And the other thing we learned last year that this staff has to get better at is it took them a long time last year with all those new linebackers. And that was the one thing I talked about before the season in my concerns was how are they going to mesh all these new pieces in at linebacker? They didn't figure it out. They didn't figure it out for a while. In fact, I'd argue they didn't have it completely figured out by the end of the year. I think there were still younger players that should have got more reps. It took way too long for Christian Allegro to play. Now you got 5 returning guys. You got a couple more going to play major roles. You're talking about a Dylan Johnson, a Barton, Brandon Lane. If he's going to stay, you got to think he's going to play a big role. What are they going to do with Ernest Willer? Then you're working in 5 transfer guys who knows what those conversations with those guys have been. And then you still have maybe a couple younger guys coming in. The staff has to do a much better job of figuring out how to use these pieces, right? It's great. Like, you have collected more chess pieces for your chessboard. Now you got to deploy them a little bit better, a little bit quicker, be a little bit smarter with it. So my gut tells me this defense line's better. I think it is. I think they got a little bigger. But keep in mind, you lost your best guy last year. Elijah Hills was a really good defensive lineman. You're bringing in a guy like a Parker Peterson. Parker Peterson had 2.5 sacks last year. Elijah Hills had 3. And Parker Peterson did that at a lower level. Mason Reiger missed the entire year with a knee injury, right? Recovering from a knee injury. So I do think it's going to be better. I love that they brought in 5 guys. They're trying to attack the weakness, but just keep in mind, we had the same conversation about linebackers last year. So it's just, I'm going to keep that in the back of my head, be cautiously optimistic. I lean optimistic anyway. You guys know that, but yeah, I want to see it. I'm curious about getting to practice this year, really taking a look at it, talking to some more guys. We're going to dive into more of these guys as well, get a little more detail on all of them. But that's my initial thoughts on defense line. I do think it's slightly better, but I do want to caution, we had the exact same thought about linebacker last year. All right, let's pause there, take a quick break for our friends of the show. Come back, talk Mabrey Mettauer, a guy who I really liked, has now left for the Badgers. What does that say? Good or bad about this program? Coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Rocket Money. Listen, if you want to save money, and goodness gracious knows after this Christmas season, I could use it. I may have spent a little too much on the kiddos. I could use Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a finance app that helps you find subscriptions that you forgot about or you forgot you were paying for. It's happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I had. And Rocket Money made it easy to track all of them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finance. Rocket Money helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, which is incredible. Whether it's subscription, spending habits, boy, my spending habits, y'all. It would be like gas station, IPAs, and sports cards. It's a dangerous combo for finance and for health. And Rocket Money is going to illustrate all those weaknesses on my part. Right now, over at Rocket Money, cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Okay, let's get back into this here. Let's talk Mabrey Mettauer. Let's talk Mabrey Mettauer, Jamel Howard, but mainly Mabrey Mettauer. Mabrey Mettauer has entered the portal, 2024 star quarterback, a big part of that recruiting class, a big part of the excitement of Badger fans. 6'5", big arm, mobile, did it at the Texas 5A level. Longo loved him. It was so easy to see the tools and to see why you'd be excited about him. And then it's just like a year later, he's gone. A couple things I want to talk about with Mettauer. The first is, I don't ever really get on players for leaving. I don't. Is it are you afraid of competition to some degree? Should players be encouraged to stick around more? Sure. But also why, right? If your coach gets fired, the coach that you came here to play for, the offense hasn't clicked. And by the way, they just brought in Danny O'Neal and Billy Edwards Jr. Like, the writing's on the wall. One quarterback can play. Here's what I say specifically about quarterbacks, man. Go find your spot. Go find your opportunity, because it's not going to be at Wisconsin when they bring in a Danny O'Neal. It's not. And I made this point, I think, in the Discord. It could have been on here. It may have been on the Discord. People were upset that potentially some promises were made to Danny O'Neal to get him to come here, because he wasn't coming here to start. So how are you going to get a Danny O'Neal who started 12 games at San Diego State last year? How are you going to get him to come to Madison to be a backup in the portal? And you probably told him you're going to be the number 2. Well, if he's coming in to be the number 2 and he's the same amount of eligibility left as Mabrey Mettauer, Mabrey's going to bounce. It is what it is. Why is that a good thing? It's a good thing in the sense that this is a ruthless business, and you want your coaches to ruthlessly recruit over players that they don't think are going to be winning pieces for them. People may not want to hear that. That's what the best programs do. By them bringing in Danny O'Neal and saying you're going to be the number 2, that was them also saying, we don't think Mabrey Mettauer is going to be ready to be that guy this year, and we need a number 2. We need a backup quarterback where if something happens to Billy Edwards Jr., who, by the way, is a running quarterback, who, by the way, is going to take hits, we need a guy in the bullpen who can come in and reliably run the offense. And the only reason we're telling this Danny O'Neal guy, we're saying you can come in and be the backup, is because we don't believe Mabrey Mettauer is. They could be wrong. That's not me saying that. That's what the staff's actions are telling you, period. That's it. That's the only reason they're bringing in a redshirt freshman with 11 games starting with the same amount of eligibility. If they really thought Mabrey Mettauer was a guy, they wouldn't be doing that. I can promise you that. If they thought Mabrey Mettauer was going to compete for a starting spot this year, or that he's going to be the long-term guy, not Carter Smith, they would not be bringing in a guy who is really being brought in to be a backup. And fans may not like that. They may say, I don't like the promises being made. But if you don't make that promise, you probably don't get Danny O'Neal. And then if you go into this year and you lose your starting quarterback and your backup gets hurt, and you don't have someone capable of going in, fans are going to be mad that you didn't make the promise to get the backup here. It is what it is. This is football now. This is college football in 2025. You got to keep adding talent. You got to keep recruiting over people. That's what the best programs do every single year. By the way, if you hear like a boom above me, I think my kids are wrestling. It's far too late for them to be up. It's like midnight. Come on, guys. I know you're on vacation, but let's get it together. So I have feelings on this because I like Mabrey Mettauer. I like the fam. I've talked to him. But you're not going to keep multiple young quarterbacks in a quarterback room happy in 2025. And you wouldn't have done it in 1995 either if they had the freedom to transfer. I'm curious what you guys are at. That was a bit of a rant. Curious where you guys are at. The first comment I saw, Ryan Willie, expect a 4-8 season. Man, it's brutal. Nick Flav, O'Neal was brought in because we need 4 or 5 scholarship guys, not to force Mabrey out. So I agree. I don't think he was brought in to force Mabrey out. But the reason you're bringing in a guy like that with the same amount of eligibility as Mabrey is because they don't think Mabrey's ready for the backup spot this year. And the end result of that is forcing Mabrey out. They're not specifically. There's no part of me who thinks they're trying to push Mabrey out the door. You want more quarterbacks in that room, but you are not bringing this guy in with that level of eligibility and telling him he's going to be the number 2 if you think Mabrey's the guy. That's what I'm saying. I think they would have loved if he stayed, but I think that's the end result on it. Nathan Fiore says, I can't believe Fickle's saying that Mettauer was that bad in practice. I think he could have been could have put us in better spots over Locke in some games. I don't know. I wanted to see Mabrey play. So I'm not going to argue with you there. I thought Locke was so poor towards the end that I don't think you had a ton to lose, quite frankly, by putting Mabrey Mettauer in. I can tell you this. I have heard from multiple spots, and this isn't me throwing shade. Please don't interpret it as that, because I like Mabrey Mettauer. I think he has a big upside. I still wish he was on this team, and he's a redshirt freshman. So a lot of redshirt freshmen aren't quite ready yet. In fact, most of them aren't. But I've heard from several places that Mabrey was not very good in practice. I can tell you I've heard that from some players. I've heard that from a couple places. I can tell you that he was probably not a big upgrade over Locke this year, based on what I've heard. Now, I still would have liked to have seen it. Straight up. I still would have liked to have seen it. But Nathan Fiore then says, do you think we're going to run 4 QBs this season now? One of those guys being a walk-on. I know they're going to look for another body now. So the quarterback room now, right? You have Billy Edwards Jr. coming in. Daniel O'Neal is going to be the backup. You'll have Carter Smith coming in. Obviously, Braden and Landon Locke both left. And then you have Milo Spasovic is the preferred walk-on. Pretty solid preferred walk-on, by the way. I'm not just saying that. Obviously, you don't want it to get to that point. I'm just saying, as a walk-on, he's a pretty solid player. I do think they'll look for another body now. Absolutely. But I don't know how easy it's going to be. I think you're targeting now maybe some type of veteran somewhere who is never going to be the starter, but he would just like to have a little bit of better college experience, maybe chill in Madison for a year, being a big-time college program. So targeting someone from a lower level who has lost his starting job, maybe something like that, who can provide some veteran presence to the room, but is not that interested in being a starter. Again, you're really narrowing your window down, but it is what it is. You have a very narrow pool to choose from when you've already brought in a backup and you've brought in a starter. Okay, let's keep going here. Alien Space says, Aaron Nolan, just enter the portal. You're not going to be able to get a guy like that, though. I mean, it's as much as you'd like to. It's not a video game. And I'm not saying that in an insulting way, but you're not going to get a guy because it's not going to work from a culture standpoint. It's not going to work from a money standpoint. Okay, let's keep going here. Any other questions? Alien Space says, Danny O'Neal looked terrible versus Boise State. Yeah. Nick Flav says, Danny O'Neal is less physically talented than Mabrey. He should have stayed and competed. Danny O'Neal is physically less talented, but I think he's more refined, and he has 11 games as a starter. So what you're doing is you're bringing in experience, because for your backup quarterback, you just need someone to come in and run the show. You just need someone, if the wheels fall off, can he be okay? Can he run the offense? And they're hoping Danny O'Neal can kind of be that. You're not going to find the perfect quarterback for the number 2. You're just not. All right, let's go here. Talk Jamel Howard really quick, also left in the portal. I think this one is similar to Mabrey. He's just getting recruited over a little bit. He's been here for a couple years. Good he came in with the physical skills to be a zero tech. If he would have developed, it would have been incredible, because we still really need that piece. That's still a piece we haven't gotten in the portal, by the way. I still don't think there's a real zero tech on this defensive line, and which is fine. Maybe it means they're not going to play the type of defense that would employ one. Maybe it's more of a 4-2-5 then, and you're not lining up right over the center. Jamel Howard would have been that guy if he would have developed. He was a big recruiting get. Miami was after him really hard among other schools. They were able to pull him away from a couple different places, Michigan, Miami, I think Virginia Tech, I think Clemson. Like, that was a big recruiting win. But as we all know in recruiting, sometimes big wins don't pan out, and sometimes preferred walk-ons are the best players on the team. That's just kind of how college football works. And he didn't pan out. I did see him this year. Like, in practice, you could tell he's a guy who it looked like he could be in better shape, is what it is. You know, not everybody comes in and it's a scheme fit or a cultural fit or whatever it is. So he'll go somewhere else as well. I don't think it's a big loss because I don't think he was going to play much this year anyway. All right, let's take one more quick break. I want to talk about a little bit of basketball next about Nolan Winter and then get any other comments y'all have. Heading into Christmas, guys, Badgers got a win today. And yeah, like a couple nice portal additions too. Let's feel good heading into Christmas. Let's take one more quick break for our friends of the show over at Game Time today. I'm sorry, over at FanDuel today. I apologize for that. FanDuel is the number one source for all your sports betting needs. The official, listen, I talked about this, y'all. The official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, the official sportsbook of Ryan Herrings, the official sportsbook of the NFL. If the NFL is good with it, y'all should be good with it too. FanDuel.com. Right now, new customers bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place live bets on all the NFL action, plus futures, parlays, teasers, updated quick spreads. It's easy to use even for a guy like me. FanDuel is awesome. Head over to FanDuel, never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Again, it's what I use. It's what our Locked On podcast uses. Always do it responsibly. Always do it responsibly, but it is a great way to spice up your sports weekend over at FanDuel.com. Okay, let's talk some basketball quick. And I wanted to go up to a comment we had right at the beginning of the show. This is from the great Will Hanna. Winter, if he continues to stack performances like the past few games, will be a force for Wisconsin. He's been good the last 2 weeks. He's the last 2 games, sorry. He's been more aggressive, and it's easy to forget. So Nolan Winter comes in last year as a true freshman. Not quite ready to play, but the team needed depth. Played, got a lot bigger this offseason. He tweaked his shot this offseason. He's had to play in a different position than originally they thought he would this offseason. Like, he's playing more of the 4, he bulked up, he's shooting different. So all these things, it's taken just a little bit to sync up, it feels like. But now it feels like it's syncing up. And you're starting to see a more aggressive version of him. You're starting to see a Nolan Winter that's shooting with a lot of confidence, but it's also battling on the glass. He's slashing to the rim. He's a little more active defensively. This is the Nolan Winter that feels like he's on the trajectory to hit his upside. And his upside's considerable. When he came into the program, I felt like there's a version potentially of like a John Lure in here, somebody who can pick and pop, 17 and 10 with good efficiency, that type of player. Now, Lure had like an 8-year NBA career. I think that's like the ultimate dream ceiling, and he's probably not going to get there. But I think there's a version of John Lure there, and that's an all Big Ten type player. He's starting to feel like he's on that trajectory. Like the elevator, it's going up. Now, there were a couple games earlier this year where you're like, bro, that looks really rough. So 2-game stretch, let's not overdo it, but it feels like there's a lot of positive momentum there. And if you're a basketball fan, it's huge because this team desperately needs a guy in the front court to score. Because it's not always good. I think, listen, look at the backcourt. You've got Tonje, you've got Blackwell. Like, you have scoring in the backcourt. You desperately need a guy in the front court who can consistently take advantage of teams, who can consistently put pressure on teams, because it's not Crowl. We know that. Even before this slump, which it feels like he's breaking out of, by the way, which is great. But even before this slump, it's not Crowl. It's not Amos. He hasn't proven to be able to do that. It all falls on Winter. It all falls on the big shoulders of Nolan Winter. And the last 2 games, starting to get confident, which I like. He's one of, if you look at players, and this is just kind of popped in my head, but which players this year, and let me know in the chat, and then we'll switch it back to football. We'll take any other comments. Which players on the basketball side do you think this year have exceeded expectations? I think Kamari McGhee, Carter Gilmore, Jack Janicki, Nolan Winter? Has Nolan Winter, over the totality of the year, exceeded expectations, or is this about what you thought? Any other players that you think in the chat have exceeded expectations this year? Curious what you guys think on that one. Robert Sorensen says, Dirk. I don't know if I can handle Rajiv if Winter works out. Yeah, he's not going to be Dirk, but I do think he's approaching his John Lure type ceiling. JB says, is Tonje coming back down to earth? Had 9 points today. It feels like the last 2 games. So one of the things I was looking at today for basketball, the usage rates for Crowl and Winter were both in the upper 20s percentile. So I think I think Crowl and Winter were both like 28%. Tonje and Blackwell were like 21, 22%. It felt like the last couple of games, they've really worked to reestablish Crowl and get Winter going. So I don't know if that is Tonje coming back to earth as much as or is it they're trying to get the front court going. Tonje certainly was never going to be the player he was through the first week, where he looked like Allen Houston. But I think he is more than he's shown the last week, too. I think there's a middle ground there where Tonje is going to comfortably finish the season averaging 14, 15 a game, which is a really good year in the Big Ten. And even in these last couple of games, you still continue to see him getting to the free throw line. People are having a really hard time keeping him out of the paint. He's just a really physical driver. And when he gets people on his shoulder, on his side, he does a great job of shielding him off and creating contact. I don't think those skill sets go anywhere. So I don't think it's coming back down to earth absolutely a little bit from the scorching start. But I don't think his coming back down to earth is going to be scoring less than 10 points a game typically either. Is where I'll be on that one. P says Tonje better than expected. He'll bounce back. I agree with that. Players that over exceeded expectations. Logan Brew, easily. Jack Janicki. Yeah, he's been great, man. What a revelation. And just when we were wandering in the midst of the blackened forest of college sports NIL and transfer portals and who do we cheer for and where's the connection to the hometown players, out of the mist comes a hero, right? Jack Janicki. You want to root for somebody, root for a preferred walk-on that is just grinding, embracing his role, hitting threes, blocking shots, playing defense. The dude looks like a better defensive version of Duke right now. I love him. I absolutely love him. Easy to root for. Badgers basketball's got a bunch of those guys. Janicki, Carter Gilmore, Kamari McGhee, super easy guys to root for. I think Steven Crowell's an easy guy to root for too, but that's just me. I know people don't like that. Dominic says he was sitting behind Janicki's dad at the Marquette game. Cool dude. Yeah, I did a show on him. When Janicki committed, I did a show and I said, I think this might be a steal, actually. That was probably one of my better takes. I said, I think he can shoot. He's got a carrying skill set. I didn't think he'd be this good defensively, though. He's gotten a little bigger, and he's really active defensively, but I've always kind of liked him. JB says, mad props, Ryan, on the Allen Houston reference. I used to wear a Houston jersey when I was playing intramural ball at the Surf. Dude, I love it. Allen Houston was a baller, absolute baller. Lefty, good stroke on those great Knicks teams that were always good but never quite great. I loved Allen Houston. He's one of my, I'm a Suns fan, but Houston was one of my low-key favorite NBA guys. Alien Space says, Janicki better than Showalter. I think so. Yes, I'm going to say yes. Yeah. Let me know in the chat. And Alien Space is saying by the time he's a senior, Janicki better than Showalter. I think so. I think he's more versatile. He can guard a little. He's a little bigger, a little more consistent as a shooter. Now, Showalter made some big shots, but yeah, I think Janicki's going to be better. But Ben Albin says, bro, no. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll say this. And maybe Ben's correct. Maybe I'm a victim of recency bias here. Listen, Zach Showalter got playing time on some really, really good Badger teams, so I don't want to minimize that. I will say this. The fact that we're even having that discussion is a good thing, right? The fact that we're even wondering if Jack Janicki is like a Zach Showalter type of player is a really good thing for this program. Logan Bro says, I remember that show way back, Ryan. Didn't believe it would be happening, but Jack proved me wrong. That's right. I don't know if we sounded the cannons for Jack Janicki, but we were excited. I thought that was a pretty good pickup when it happened. All right, let me pull a couple more comments down here. JB says, I want lockdown corners. Did we get those yet? No, we did not. Listen, we're not going to get lockdown corners, bro. I don't know what to tell you. I wish we would. But what you're looking at in the portal now, and I mentioned it when I was talking defensive line, were our edge players. And kind of one of the reasons I like the Kentucky edge guy whose last name is Fearbry? Tyreese Fearbry. I'm going to figure out how to pronounce that, I promise, and I apologize for that. One of the reasons I liked him is because he's a lottery ticket with a lot of upside. At corner, you can't do that. Like, you need guys you know can play. Because if you take a couple lottery tickets and they bust, the cornerback rooms, it's already going to be bad. Guys, let's be real here. Let's not blow smoke. This is not going to be a good cornerback room. I think what they need to do is find a couple guys with experience that have some physical skill set that can at least play. You got to get guys that you know for sure you can plug in and be C's. I like, it's not, there's no good answers to this. You have nobody in the room except freshman and Rico Hallman and Jay Harper. I actually really like Jay Harper. Don't sleep on Jay Harper. So it's going to be Rico, Jay Harper, Emilio, and a couple freshmen and a couple transfers. You got a couple of those transfers you bring in. If you want to bring in one lottery guy, fine. A couple of those transfers you bring in, you had damn well better be sure they can play. Day one, maybe they're not going to be stars, but day one, I can plug him in and he can be a Caesar Williams. Day one, I can plug him in and he can be a Max Lofi. Day one, I can plug him in and he can be a Devin Smith. I'm going through my random Rolodex of Badger cornerbacks. You had damn well be sure you get some cornerbacks that can play day one. You got to in the portal. So you're not going to get the lockdown guys. We just lost the potential lockdown guy in Xavier Lucas. You're not going to replace him in the portal, unfortunately. But you had darn well better get solid. Again, going back to my words, solid. JB also says, is the defense line better than Barton, Hills, McDonald? No. Better than Cheeks, Peterson, Hills? No. Yeah, it's a question. Dirk Dirking says, my last name is pronounced Deer King. Okay, thank you. So if I ever mispronounce names, guys, please let me know because I strive not to. So Dirk Deer King says, has anyone asked why has there been such an exodus on the defense? Lots of people. I think here's a concern I have. When everybody in a room leaves and you look at that cornerback room, especially when there's playing time available, I think you have to look at the positional coach. You have to. And I'm not saying it's all on Paul Haynes, but I do wonder, he's an older school coach. I do wonder if he is not relating as well with this era of college football player. Where I think now in the past, you could recruit somebody. And once you got them on the roster, you didn't have to give a crap about them anymore. That sounds cold. That sounds harsh. Go watch the movie The Program. Once you get them in the roster, and I'm not saying these coaches are being being jerks or anything like that. I'm just saying old school coaches, when you got them in the room, you no longer had to cater to them. I think now you have to continually kind of walk a line of building that relationship and coaching them. And I kind of wonder if old school coaches are just really struggling with that. It's just a theory, but I don't know. Ryan Willie says, is Wisconsin always going to keep going to the portal for a quarterback? I'm not renewing my season tickets. That bums me out. And I get it, Ryan. Great name, by the way. I get it. It bums me out when I see people who care about this, like I care about this, losing interest. The answer to is Wisconsin always going to keep going to the portal for a quarterback? I hope not. But who knows, right? I hope not. But the answer to that is to recruit a high school quarterback and develop them. And so far, you recruited a Braden Locke, Braden Locke was a transfer guy, but you recruited a Landon Locke and he's already gone. A Cole LaCrew and he's already gone. Mabrey Mettauer and he's already gone. So the answer is, if they keep striking out on developing quarterbacks, they will keep going to the portal. And I know that's kind of a milquetoast in the middle answer, but that's the truth. You got Carter Smith. Can you develop him? Because if you can't, you're going to go to the portal again. And you may go to the portal again next year, even with a Carter Smith, because he might not be ready. So I don't know, man. I'm hoping not, but there's always a chance they could. I know there's a bunch of comments in here, guys. Zach Bartz, the great Zach Bartz says, I like the guys on defense and who they're bringing in, but I'm not sold on the defensive staff. Positions that don't produce, didn't play guys to see what they had. Could have kept LaFayette with snaps. 100%. I have never agreed with anybody more in my life than I am agreeing with Zach Bartz right here. Anybody. I 100% agree. I also like the guys on defense they're bringing in. I'm a little more lukewarm on it, I think, but I like what they brought in. But this defensive staff has to be better than last year. I think they're capable of it. I like the defense line coach a lot. They got to be better. Period. Point blank. 100% agree, Zach. All right, we're going to wrap it there. Y'all are amazing. As always, appreciate the heck out of you. If you're listening now, if you're going to watch tomorrow, if you're watching on the TV, the car, wherever you are, thank you so much. On Wisconsin. Bunch more content coming up this week, too. We had a really good conversation with Hayden Jones, the New Zealand basketball commit. Really fun guy. That's going to be coming up on a show as well. On Wisconsin. Appreciate you guys. And we will talk later. Go check out Locked On Big Ten or the Locked On College Football Network for all the latest stories on those channels. Let's go.